This eye's still a little bit blurry. The other part of this eye is blurry. But the main thing that's bothering me at the minute is double vision.
When he's looking up and in, the left eye is going up and in extremely well. The right eye is kind of stopping. You see how the right eye is just not as high up as the left, and that's a restriction. So the eye wants to go and he wants to track it, but the more I do this, the more he's going to start aching in that upper inner aspect. And what he's going to do is, if he's in a fight situation, he's not going to be dealing with it. He doesn't want the ache in the eye, and he also doesn't want to have double. So what he's going to do is tilt his head. So that's on that side. If you look at the left, which should be matching it, so you're looking across, up, 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 as much as you can. And you can see how, again, with the right eye, it's up and out, but the left eye is just not able to go as extremely up as possible.
When I got poked in the eye, obviously, and then people were like, his eye wasn't even red. Does your eye always go red when there's something wrong, or is that?
You can absolutely lose your vision without having a painful red eye. So you don't need a red eye to have blurred vision at all. So no.
Yeah. So how long till I can train properly, spar?
It's a long road ahead, but the prognosis is guarded at the moment. I would recommend that you wouldn't fight until your double visions resolve.
Tom Aspinall went to the doctors, and the doctors has confirmed that he's got some issues with his eyeballs. He's got some soft tissue damage to the eyeballs, and that will happen when a 6'6" Frenchman sticks both of his fingers knuckle deep into your eyeballs, okay? So that's not surprising. But what is surprising is that he has something called Brown syndrome, which basically is where the eyes aren't moving in tandem with one another. So therefore, the eyes, which are basically cameras, right, for your brain, in case you don't know, they're seeing different images. And when you see different images, you see double, or maybe sometimes the brain cuts out one of the images so that it doesn't get confusing and you don't get headaches and stuff like that. And then, of course, when you're only seeing through one eye, you have problems with depth perception.
Tom Aspinall has always been one of those rare heavyweights who blends humility, professionalism, and raw destructive power in a way that earns respect long before he even walks into the Octagon. For years, he has presented himself with a calmness and maturity the UFC wishes every champion had. He has stepped in on short notice, saved main events, walked into chaos without blinking, and never once tried to bully the promotion or tear down another fighter just to get attention. Yet somehow, he's now stuck in the middle of one of the most petty, disrespectful SMAID jobs a heavyweight division has seen in a long time. And the entire situation exploded because of a very real, medically serious, potentially career-altering eye injury. That injury, which happened in the bout with Cyril Gane, wasn't a light poke or a temporary blur that fighters often recover from quickly. It resulted in a diagnosis that included restricted eye movement, depth perception problems, constant migraines, and possible long-term complications that could affect not just his career, but his everyday life. Tom laid all of this out clearly and honestly in his update video. But instead of people responding with empathy or concern, something else happened entirely. His openness turned into an invitation for Jon Jones, who had been silent for over a year while Tom respectfully called him out, to suddenly pop back into the picture, only to mock, minimize, and outright dismiss an injury that any experienced fighter would immediately recognize as serious. And that is what has the MMA world furious. Because when Tom Aspinall was healthy, motivated, and eager for a unification fight, Jon completely vanished. He stepped away, removed himself from the conversation, ignored every respectful challenge, and left Tom holding an interim title that felt more like a wall than an opportunity. He didn't offer a conversation, didn't give a reason, didn't even acknowledge Tom's existence. Meanwhile, Tom kept grinding, kept winning, and kept representing the division with integrity. Jon's silence made it painfully obvious that the unification fight was never happening unless every detail lined up perfectly in Jon's favor. But the moment Tom gets hurt, when he's vulnerable, when fans start worrying about his future, that long silence disappears instantly. Suddenly, Jon Jones has more to say than he has in the past year and a half. What Jon said wasn't playful trash talk or simple competitive banter. It was bitter, smug, and clearly intended to paint Tom Aspinall as someone who quit, someone who didn't fight through adversity, someone whose championship mentality was somehow fake. And he did this knowing full well that eye injuries are some of the most dangerous and career-threatening injuries in all combat sports.
Situation. Looked like Curtis Blaze came to beat Tom Aspinall up that night. Tom throws a kick and magically gets hurt. I would expect a fighter to at least attempt to stand back up or at least limp. And with Tom, he was just completely out of the fight. And his last situation was Cyril Gane. He gets poked in the eye. Normally you see fighters that are doing this number, trying to get the doctor to look at it. And actually, initially the doctor's just like, he seems fine. Tom's like, no, I can't see. I can't. The guy wasn't trying to see.
Yeah.
The guy didn't want to see. The eye that he was covering appeared to be the eye that actually didn't get penetrated. One eye finger goes all the way underneath the eyelid. The other eye, it was on top of the eyelid. And he ends up grabbing the eye where the finger was on top of the eyelid. So I don't even think Tom really knew which eye was supposed to be more compromised. He just knew that he had been fouled and it was his way out. So that alone shows me a little bit what's behind the facade of this whole Tom Aspinall character.
Can we get full-time Bully Aspinall after this smear campaign? How are you going to be on the comeback?
Right, when I come back, there is no more Mr. Nice Guy. Nice Tom. When it comes to MMA, he's gone, and I'm going full bad guy, I think.
I feel as Tom's a great athlete, but I do feel like he's a one-trick pony.
When you look at people talking shit online of like, oh, he's ducking this guy or he's dodging this guy, they haven't seen the work that you've done in the past and how dominant you've been. We know you're not ducking this guy. I mean, talk to me about what you saw in his fight with Gane. I mean, because Gane looked like he was controlling the fight.
With Cyril Gane?
Yeah.
I believe that his wrestling and jiu-jitsu is incredibly overrated. He has a beautiful 1-2. I got to learn a lot about his patterns in his last fight. Beautiful 1-2. That's really about it. He couldn't touch Cyril Gane at all. That's the way I felt. I felt like Gane was just getting warmed up.
People forget that eye injuries aren't something a fighter can simply tough out. They can't be conditioned through, and anyone who tries to ignore them ends up risking blindness or permanent damage. And that is exactly why Dana White's frustration with this entire situation is becoming impossible to hide. He saw everything unfold behind the scenes. He saw the UFC attempt to make Jones versus Aspinall a reality. He saw Jon step away from the conversation. He saw fans turn on Tom after the eye pokes, analysts distort the story, and a narrative grow legs without Jon correcting a single rumor. Then, after Tom spent weeks visiting specialists, running scans, and trying to figure out whether he even had a career left, Jon Jones suddenly popped back up only to mock him publicly. Dana White can't stand that. Not because he favors one fighter over another, but because it disrespects fighter safety, harms the UFC's credibility, and turns a real medical issue into some cheap online spectacle meant to tear down a man who has never once stepped out of line. Now the heavyweight division is split. Some believe Jon Jones is intentionally derailing the championship picture, while others see Tom Aspinall being unfairly torn apart by a storyline built on pure misinformation.
And he's waiting around for Jon Jones for a whole year, over a year. Career on hold. Despite the fact that he told everyone, look, this guy ain't going to fight me. He's going to retire before he'll fight me. So you might as well just give me the title now. But unfortunately, the UFC, they wanted to believe that their GOAT was the man that they bigged him up to be. And they were wrong. And after working his whole life to become UFC heavyweight champion, this was the way it was announced.
Jon Jones called us last night and retired. Jon Jones is officially retired. Tom Aspinall is the heavyweight champion of the UFC.
All right, Dana, calm down. Don't get too excited. And that was in the middle of the night in some random ass UFC press conference. No ceremony, no celebration, no congratulations, Tom. We've got the best young fighter in the world. It was as if no one gave a fuck from the UFC. It was so bad. And I get Dana was pissed because he'd been made to look a fool by Jon Jones, but that was never Tom Aspinall's fault. Tom just wanted to fight the best guy he possibly could. And you'd think MMA fans would love that. There's a fighter who's trying to fight the best, wants to win the title, wants to defend the title and be an active heavyweight champion, something we've not had in God knows how long in the UFC. But no, because Jon Jones weirdly has a lot of fans who want to see him protected and not get his chin smashed to bits, they supported the guy who ran away from the fight and trashed Tom consistently. What a weird fan base.
Dana now finds himself trapped in the center of a conflict that never should have spiraled into what it is. The UFC had been pushing hard for Tom and Jon to headline the historic White House event, the single biggest marketing moment the company has ever secured. But Jon's refusal to commit, followed by his sudden return only to mock a serious medical injury, left Dana with no choice but to completely close the door on that matchup. The White House card will proceed without Jon Jones because Dana refuses to incentivize behavior that tears the UFC down rather than pushes it forward. Meanwhile, Tom Aspinall is trying to steer through a situation where his grit, his reputation, and even his honesty are being questioned by people who have zero understanding of what is actually going through physically. And with every update about the complexity of the eye issue, the outrage toward Jon only intensifies. Fighters, analysts, reporters, and former champions are calling out the blatant disrespect, especially considering Tom has never taken a shot at Jon Jones in public and has spent most of his career calling him the best to ever do it. All of this has turned the heavyweight landscape into a pressure cooker, because the UFC cannot keep brushing off eye poke controversies. It cannot keep letting fighters be criticized for real medical problems. And it certainly cannot keep allowing a legend like Jon Jones to twist the narrative at the cost of a champion who has done absolutely nothing to deserve it.
Does he fight in 2026? True or false?
Well,
he's talking so much smack about Tom.
He doesn't have the money to not. He doesn't have the money to walk away. He doesn't have a choice. I mean, that's
why did he walk away to begin with? He was offered $30 million. Yeah. He asked for 30, and he got that.
Yeah, no,
and now he's apologizing.
Yeah, no, I don't know. He
miscalculated that one.
Yeah, he did that thing with Nate, and they got $300,000, and it took 30 days, and so all of a sudden he's like, "Well, if I can make $300,000 in 30 days, and I can do this every 30 days."
Sure.
No, I mean, sometimes explaining very basic things it can be tough, but will he fight again? Yes, I believe so, and I think there's some real legs. Look, if you're the UFC, the last thing you want to do is empower a dude that you can't count on, and by the way, it ties back into my theory to whoever's keeping him out of the rankings. Like there's something afoot.
What are you left feeling after the fight?
Well, look, if you were sidelined from doing your job for like 15 months, not allowed to do anything, you train your ass off for 6 months for a fight, then to get double eye pokes, be left with no vision for nearly 6 weeks because of an illegal move. How do you think I feel? Not feeling fantastic, am I?
This tension is exactly why Dana White's patience is hanging by a thread. Because Jon Jones taking shots at a man who may be dealing with long-term vision problems isn't just bad PR, it's disrespectful to the sport itself. What makes everything even more explosive is the fact that Tom Aspinall never begged for sympathy, never asked for special treatment, and never once tried to spin his injury into some kind of bargaining chip against the UFC or against Jon Jones. He simply laid out what happened, shared the medical images, described the symptoms, and allowed fans to understand just how serious the situation really was. But instead of people respecting that honesty, it became ammunition for critics who were desperate to portray him as fragile, overrated, or undeserving of the heavyweight spotlight. The irony is that Tom Aspinall has built his entire reputation on doing the exact opposite, stepping up at moments when most fighters step away. And if the UFC kept a record for dependability the way it does for knockouts, Tom would be undefeated. That's why his medical update hit the MMA community so hard. Not because the injury itself was unexpected, but because it proved that every accusation thrown at him after the Cyril Gane fight was rooted in total misunderstanding. He didn't fold. He didn't surrender. He didn't search for an escape. He wasn't overwhelmed. He suffered an eye injury severe enough to interfere with eye tracking, strain the surrounding muscles, and threaten the long-term stability of his sight.
Through this, Tom's the one that's getting absolutely slaughtered online, and Tom's the one 6 weeks later still having to go to the doctor and still can't train and do any kind of combat. So he's the man that's living with this, okay? So you understand, you kind of will get emotional, you will be pissed off, and you will think that Cyril Gane was doing that on purpose. I still don't, okay? I don't think Cyril Gane did that on purpose. What you want to do is crack someone in the face, and when the hands are out, when you go to grab, if someone comes in to take you down or whatever, sometimes that happens. That's why this whole rule of the fingers being up, not allowed there, but they're allowed there, is stupid.
This is number one bullshit.
Because what happens when someone comes forward and you got to grab them, because you can grab, you're allowed to in the rules, fingers go haywire, go into eyes. Make a fist, make a loose fist. It's not hard. That's all that's going to happen. But anyway, so Tom's saying that, and he's getting absolutely slaughtered online. A lot of people are talking shit, okay? All you've got to do is Google his name, look on Instagram, look on Twitter, and some of the comments are just ridiculous.
Give us your reaction to the eye poke and how it all went out.
I mean, I feel the way everybody feels. Great showing, shitty ending, you know?
it would seem obvious that a rematch is right on the cards. Would you like to just rebook these guys as soon as Tom is able to get back in there?
Yeah, total pain in the ass, but yes.
Think about Dana White saying Tom didn't continue.
Tom didn't want to continue in the fight, so.
And then also, who gives it to eye pokes?
Who gives it?
Well, listen, I didn't continue. I'll tell you why I didn't continue. Because I'm not a dummy. Like, I'm not going to go out there and fight one of the best strikers in the world if I can't see. I know, as an MMA fighter, look, things are going to happen in the fight that compromise you. Go back and watch my fight with Arlovski. The end of the first round, he punched me right in the eyeball. For the rest of that fight, I couldn't see him out that eye. That's fine. If you get punched or kicked in the eye, that's fine. If you get double eye poked in both eyes and you've got no vision because of a foul, why should I carry on so some dummy can look and say, oh yeah, Tom just got knocked out? Because I ain't going to fight if I can't see anything because of a foul.
The real explosion point comes from the rising belief that Jon Jones is choosing his moments not out of competitive drive, but out of personal convenience. When Tom Aspinall was healthy, active, and demanding the unification bout, Jon stayed completely silent. When the UFC pushed to build a matchup for the historic White House card, he stayed unavailable. When the division needed direction, he offered none. But the instant Tom suffers an injury, the instant he faces uncertainty about his future, the instant he openly reveals how serious the damage truly is, Jon Jones suddenly finds endless motivation to taunt him, belittle him, and frame him as someone undeserving of threatening the legacy he claims to protect. And that is exactly why fans have shifted from irritation to outright fury, because the MMA audience may argue about everything else, but it recognizes cruelty the moment it appears. Tom Aspinall has never disrespected Jon Jones. He has always spoken about him with admiration, even warmth, repeatedly calling him the greatest to ever compete. When the unification fight fell apart, Tom never took cheap shots. He never accused Jon of ducking him. He never tried to smear his name. He simply kept working, kept performing, and patiently waited for the opportunity the UFC believed was guaranteed. For Jon Jones to use Tom's medical crisis as a way to pull attention back onto himself feels intentional, strategic, and shockingly out of line for a man who constantly emphasizes his understanding of the sport's history. And that is why Dana White, for the first time openly, has positioned himself on the opposite side of Jon Jones. Dana isn't defending Tom because it's the future of the division. Dana is defending him because the facts cannot be ignored. An injury of this magnitude is not a storyline for entertainment. It is a serious warning. The heavyweight division now sits at a pivotal moment, where the champion who helped stabilize this era is battling for his long-term health rather than his next opponent.
Some reporters think that because I think that he should box because it's more money, that affected him in the fight. I've never heard as much as people saying what I say affects Tom in a fight. I say loads of things to loads of people. People who are around me all the time know that. Boxers are around me all the time. It's just because of the money. And it's the back to, if your son was a fighter, would you sooner fight for a ton of money or not a ton of money? It's a no-brainer, but people still have a narrative of what a fight is. You know, something needs doing about it.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, it's horrendous for me to look at that.
Say that. How is he not disqualified off that? It's outrageous. And then people start booing me like, my fault. He double faulted me, mate. Just trained for 14 months. Trust me, didn't want someone's finger knuckle deep in my eye. It's the last thing I wanted.
Bully Aspinall has finally come out. Tom Aspinall is showing he doesn't care about the UFC and the UFC fans who have been giving him shit for a long time.
He's going at the fans, he's going at Dana White, and he's going at Cyril Gane.
Let's go over what he said. Cyril Gane is a cheater. He goes into fights looking to eye poke, back of the head shots. He even said Jon Jones, before he fought Cyril Gane, called him a cheater as well. Then he says he's pissed off with Dana White, and he's also said he's got Brown syndrome, which is a pretty serious eye condition, which may involve surgery. He's not training right now. He just wants to get his eyes back to 100%.
And you know what? It's all warranted. Dana White, very unnecessary comments after that fight.
You know, he's very much been the nice guy, the polite Englishman, the gentleman. Now, he doesn't care. The gloves are off, and this Tom Aspinall is going to self-ice, and dare I say, he's going to knock out Cyril Gane. He's coming in with a vengeance in the rematch.
While the former champion who once dominated the heavyweight landscape is now chasing relevance, the current champion who carried the division forward is fighting for his health. And that imbalance is exactly what has pushed Dana White into a stance where he's ready to confront Jon Jones openly, firmly and without pulling punches. Dana didn't take Jon off the potential White House lineup because of negotiations or contract disputes. He shut that door because the UFC cannot showcase a fighter who openly mocks the medical condition of the man who held the division together during his absence. That move is bigger than matchmaking. It's a declaration about values, professionalism, and what it truly means to represent the sport at the highest standard. And as Tom Aspinall keeps undergoing evaluations, keeps meeting with experts, keeps holding out hope for a clear diagnosis, the MMA community is finally recognizing that the criticism thrown at him was never grounded in reality. It was fueled by impatience, misunderstanding, and narratives built by people who never understood the severity of what he was dealing with.
I guess the clarifying question then is, if Dana and Hunter do come to you after this fight, the figures make sense to you, would you then be open to fighting Tom Aspinall, or are you categorically thinking, he does nothing for me, I will not fight that guy?
He does nothing for me. He does nothing for me. If you're a person that wants to see me really challenged, then I get it. 7 years younger, like 35 pounds bigger than me, right? I get it. It's like, wow, this Jon's so good. We finally found someone way younger and way bigger than him. Let's see how he does it. I get that narrative. But for me, if you were my manager, if you were on my team, why not fight against Pereira, a guy who's the same age as you, and we walk around the same exact size? Business-wise, it makes more sense. I'm going to call him this, fight the nobody that may be more dangerous, or fight the guy with all the accolades who's incredibly dangerous, but it actually will affect your legacy.
And of course, it's been pretty interesting, all the stuff that Jon Jones has been saying to the media this week, and I'm sure there's more to come, but check out these.
You're beating guys who aren't even champions, and you consider yourself a champion. He's not a champion.
So Jon said I need to fight more champions, but this is the problem I've got. Jon is the champion, and he won't fight me. And he says that he won't fight me because it's too much of a gamble.
Aspinall to me is no difference than an Olin St. Prude or Dominic Reyes or Anthony Smith, being like just another up and comer that's exciting right now. And I'm not into gambling my legacy for what's exciting.
And Jon, if you're not into gambling your legacy, that to me sounds like you're scared of losing against me.
The backlash, once fueled by confusion and loud speculation, has now been completely overturned as the real facts have surfaced. With clarity finally replacing chaos, every fighter who has endured injuries far worse than the public ever understood has stepped up to support Tom. What began as criticism has turned into a rally behind a man who never once tried to manipulate the moment. This situation, Tom's damaged eye, Jon's taunt, and Dana's breaking point, has evolved far beyond a simple debate about who the top heavyweight is. It has become a test of character, a question of who carries themselves with honor, who respects the gravity of their influence, and who stand beside an athlete who has done everything in his power to hold the division together. In the end, this is no longer about wins and belts. It's about integrity, leadership, and recognizing a fighter who has given the UFC more than anyone realized.